In this vast world, there is an infinity of different toys. A Templar knight recites a prayer while holding a golden sword. With a firm look, he warns that today the demon will be judged. Another voice in the room says he is very noisy. After that, the warrior was dismembered, and the one who did it said he sent him to the side of his god. An old man enters the same room. Looking at his watch, he says he doesn't have much time. He draws his sword, warning that today is his wedding anniversary, so they would have to finish quickly. The old man also died cruelly. Suddenly, a little girl appears asking if he is there. The voice says that this time a cute toy appeared. From behind the door, awkwardly, she wants to know if he is the boss of that tower. He answers yes. The girl says she is lucky because she got lost in this big place. Her expression changes and she casts a spell, telling him to die. The next second, held by her hair, she begs for help while crying. The voice says it wouldn't help her because she hurt him, and with that, it becomes clear. A monster with goat horns attacks a hunter. He stands still in shock, and the next second, multiple cuts outline his body. Another one crushed by the boss. The creature has crimson red eyes, and from his room, no one ever came out alive. Baphomet is the owner of the tower and classifier of toys, or as others call them, heroes. Sitting on his throne, he collects weapons from those who have challenged him. For him, the moment the heroes try to kill him is the best part of the day. But he always ends up disappointed, because the heroes are useless. Facing the door, he says it has never opened for him. Touching it, he thinks he will never see the outside world where the heroes come from. And he feels furious, because his life is like a dog's waiting for its owner. Punching the wall, he says he doesn't understand. This place is not cool. He just wants to know why they won't let him out of there. Suddenly a phone behind him rings. He's curious because it seems to be something one of the heroes dropped. And with that, he had an idea. Suddenly, an excited hero opens the door, saying he finally reached the top floor. Sweating nervously, he asks if he is the boss and says he will kill him and become the greatest hunter in the world. Another one who was shattered and couldn't do anything. Kneeling in front of Baphomet, he begs for help. As the boss approaches, the hero panics. The monster brings the phone close to the hunter's face and asks how they use that. With no other option, the hero explained that unfortunately, that device would only unlock with facial recognition. The boss took the head of the guy he had killed to see if it was the right one. And the hero continues explaining that he could also use that to capture special moments, and took a picture of friends forever. Baphomet was curious about what the hero's world was like, and the hero explained to him that the device could even play music. As he was explaining, he stood up, instructing Baphomet while moving towards his sword, until he found an opening to strike him in the neck, but died without being able to attack. While Baphomet thought that was pretty cool and that the tower was becoming more fun. Looking at the pile of bodies, he wondered if the others also had some items. He saw a notebook with names and stars of other heroes, but threw it away as he judged it to be trash, that we should have paid attention to one of the names. Occasionally, amid that pile of things, he could get a glimpse of what the hero's life was like. He even played music to relax while lying on the floor of the room. But a problem arose. The more he knew about the hero's world, the more curious he became. He wanted to know what the real world was like and not just live that illusion. But that seemed distant. But he knew that in the world of toys, there was a god who granted wishes. If that god existed, could he grant this wish? After some time playing music, the phone's battery runs out, and Baphomet says the hero didn't inform him of that. Back to boredom, when suddenly another toy arrived and he sat on the throne, but he could only think he wanted it to end. Suddenly the door opened. Another hero or toy entered, a young man with white hair and golden eyes. From afar, Baphomet stared at him, and after looking for a second, he attacked, but the hunter managed to defend, dodged the blow and found an opening in his back, and used it with a blue flame skill. Seeing that blow, Baphomet thought that this was the hero he had been waiting for, and with that, he smiled. An explosion filled the room, and after the smoke cleared, the hunter was standing. For the first time, Baphomet used his protective magic circle. He and the hunter prepared for another attack, and they clashed blades once more. As Baphomet thought something was burning, he felt that was what he had forgotten. He prepared a pentagram in his hand, but the hunter dodged the chain attack. That was the battle he wanted, and once again he advanced towards the hunter. When he was about to strike him from behind, he said he felt happy, but the hunter saw the attack and dodged in time, once again moving towards Baphomet, who was now thrown against the wall. While wondering why he felt envy for that toy, he transformed and wings appeared on his back. In a flash, he disappeared and struck the hunter. Now transformed, he believed he would win. But as the fight progressed, he began to question himself, and the hunter found an opportunity to strike him in the back. He managed to defend with the pentagram, but began to realize he was being defeated. He used his skill and multiple blades went towards the hero as he declared he was the owner of the tower. But once again, the hero defended himself, and Baphomet began to think he wanted to leave. A voice in his ear said it knew what it felt like to be trapped. At that moment, the hunter was about to finish him. Blue flames surrounded his shield. Protected by the barrier, he wondered if he would really be defeated there. And in the middle of the flames, he saw the hero's gaze, now standing in the middle of the room. He saw himself as the hunter's toy, realizing that human was free and strong, something he had always dreamed of being, to leave there and become human. That was what he wanted. A system window appears with the mission to kill the hunter Raven, and the reward would be having his wish granted. But the blade had already been thrust into his stomach, and the system informed the hero that he had completed the Tower of the Abyss. Soon the tower would disappear, and with that he withdrew, leaving Baphomet's destroyed body. In his last seconds of life, he saw him leave the room. Suddenly, he grabbed the blade, and the top floor of the tower exploded with a boom that echoed throughout the city. Sometime later on the ground, tractors were excavating the rubble. Workers talked among themselves about finding several bodies. It's really a shame that so many hunters die entering the Tower of the Abyss. But there, amid all the rubble, there was one alive. They asked if he was okay. The moment Raven was about to leave the room, Baphomet rose behind him. He turned to try to react and attacked with the blue flame. But even being burned, the monster remained standing. The hunter couldn't believe it, and blood was dripping from his mouth. Baphomet's arm pierced his chest and ripped out his heart. He crushed it and said that now that he killed him, he would continue living. One of the construction workers asked if he was okay and what his name was, hearing that made him laugh. The main mission to kill the hunter Raven had been completed, and he replied that his name was Baphomet, and now he was human. Hunters are people who fight against monsters in dungeons and towers. They didn't have much importance until a catastrophic event known as portal shocks. These phenomena resulted in the appearance of monsters whenever the towers were not completed, leading to the destruction of 1/3 of the population. After the emergence of these phenomena, several hunters were trained to destroy the towers. Baphomet was the fearsome boss of the Tower of the Abyss, responsible for reaping countless hunters' lives. Fascinated by humans and harboring a burning desire to become one of them, when he left the tower, people confused him with the hero who had completed the Tower of the Abyss. Several reporters surrounded him, wanting to know how he felt about completing one of the most difficult towers. People were eager to see the power of the hero who had completed the tower, but he had completely lost his power upon becoming human. He turned into a normal human and ended up becoming the leader of a slum, managing a quarry in a dungeon. In that same place, a boy told an old man that he was the new employee and hoped he would take good care of him. The old man responded, asking if he was the one who had just been hired and if he liked the place. He thanked him and said he was enjoying it. The old man curiously asked if he knew how the work functioned. He promptly replied that he didn't know much. The old man reassures him, saying that the job mainly requires strength. The young man comments that the quarry is huge. The old man says they are responsible for areas C and D. He mentions there's a small chance of finding rare items in the quarry so he won't get bored. Suddenly, a young man orders everyone to get out of the way immediately, shouting that his brother is arriving. He asks the old man who they are. The old man tells him never to mess with or cause trouble for them because they are bad people who wander around the quarry. If he is unlucky enough to get involved with them, be sure that his life is in danger, especially that one, in this case, the protagonist. The old man tells him never to approach him. The young man asks why people like them are in that place. The old man responds, saying he has no idea. He mentions to the young man that the director likes them a lot because they are great at their job. A man appears and hands out envelopes of money to the workers. The young man grumbles, asking if people still give money in envelopes nowadays. Then the man gives a packet of money to Baphomet as well. The man tells him that he heard he was in that place. Someone asked him if he would like something to eat, mentioning that he had eaten very well the last time they went out together, and asked if he had enjoyed it. Another person says they can even take a bath in a public sauna. A smiling young man raises his arm and asks what he spends the salary he earns on. But immediately after, someone slaps him in the face. A person comments that the young man is very ignorant, and that if the protagonist wanted to tell them, he would have already done so. Thrown to the ground, the young man apologizes and says he won't do it again. The protagonist gets angry watching the scene, and then he shouts. In his mind, he questioned why they wanted to know what he did with his money. And with anger, he says he gives everything to a damn doctor. He remembers being accused of being a swindler when he left the tower, and then beaten until he ended up in a hospital with no money in his pocket. The doctor, carrying 2 black spheres, which he would love to get lost in, says that it's a complicated situation and that she can't do anything. But she gave him a suggestion, and with a smile on her face, said to pay with his body. My goodness, with a threat as cruel as that, I would let her take my soul just for her. And since then, all the money I earned goes to that damn doctor. He says it's better this way since he was tired of going out on the street and being cursed at because they believed he was a bad person. But he also got involved in problems in the ravine. Once they threw a stone at his head. The guy said he was a cheater and asked to learn how to get famous with lies too. He ignored it and continued to ignore it until he realized that the word swindler didn't mean a bad person. And then he beat everyone. Many called him to fight, but they were easily beaten. He even beat those who just looked at him. And before he knew it, some people started to follow him. They began to call him brother, so he had to pretend to be with them. It wasn't the life he wanted to live. Suddenly, a monster with goat horns attacks the workers in that same place. One of them asks for help when about to be killed. Suddenly, the creature's arm is cut off. With a series of attacks, 2 hunters defeat it. The girl asks if he is okay and tells him he shouldn't be in that place because there are many monsters. The young man thanks them. Baphomet thinks that powers differentiate humans from each other, and he wonders if the reason he lost his power was because he became human. He says he shouldn't have wished for that, calling himself an idiot. All he wanted was to be free and strong like he remembered the hunter he killed. The young man appears and asks everyone if they don't think his brother is the most handsome there, and that the hunter is nothing. The workers comment among themselves that hunters can be cool, but not as cool as his brother. Baphomet thinks that's true, but they have never seen a really strong hunter. A worker asks the heroes if they make a lot of money with the magic stones they get from the monsters. He says there are rumors that they make so much money they can live in a penthouse. Another young man says they are just lucky to earn more than us. Baphomet thinks that the heroes don't know the true value of money and are just playing around. Someone asks him what he thinks about it while he smiles without realizing he was smiling. The guys stare at him and he is confused, wondering why he was laughing, and asks them if they are having fun. They stare at him for a second and then ask if they are a joke to him. And one of them proposes a bet that whoever makes Baphomet laugh will take the entire month's salary. Baphomet says he has felt this before in the tower with his toys. Fun. Maybe he was longing for the day he would be happy. Now he can feel like this without needing to fight them, because now he is human. A worker asks him his name, and he responds that he doesn't know how to write, and the worker says that he wants to keep his name a secret, it seems. The worker asks if he wants to learn to write his name. He comments that his name is not so beautiful, but his country chose it with care. He questions Baphomet if he thinks it would be cool to choose his own name. The protagonist asks his name. When the young man was about to say, a wall of flames appears behind them, and an explosion sweeps the place. He doesn't know exactly what just happened, and he is shocked to be hurt. His pupils contract when he looks at the flames, seeing several of his colleagues being roasted. He says they break his toys again, right when he was in the middle having fun. Furious, he asks who did this. The boy says they are rank C hunters, and the girl asks who they think they are to come here. With a smile, he says this is a good opportunity for him. The heroes say this will be his funeral. He thinks he thought it was just rumors, but there really are hunters who enter dungeons to steal everything. The hero says he is not a rookie, and then asks who he really is. The boy responds neither right nor wrong. The heroes talk, and the huntress says many people got hurt, but now is not the time to think about it. She asks fearfully if they are going to run away. The hero tells her he is probably a rank B and there's nothing they can do. While he was saying they needed to ask for help, something passed by them. In a moment, the young man attacks the hero. The sword sticks in the ground and the lifeless body falls. The enemy says the heroes talk too much. The girl runs towards him to attack him. With a smile, he says hunters are very sentimental. And then a slash passes through her leg. Laughing, he says GG out. And a portal appears bringing several men. One of them says they made a big mess and asks if there is anything left. He says her eyes must be worth something, but it looks like she is still alive. Maybe they can get good money for her. Crying, she asks what they are talking about. The young man tells her the only thing he steals are hunters. The huntress gets desperate and screams for help. The man asks if her equipment is expensive, but soon remembers that the equipment is traceable, and also that weapons are bound to the user, so the stats drop to 0% when used. One of them pulls her by the hair, asking if she thinks someone will help her if she keeps screaming. He tells her to give up because no one will come, and if by chance that happened, she would be the luckiest woman. In seconds, a head is cut off. The leader looks back and several bandits are already dead. Baphomet, furious, asks if it was him who made all this mess. The mission is initiated with the purpose of avenging the humans who defeated him, and as a reward he will gain the power he so desires. He says the one responsible for breaking his toys was him then, as the protagonist extends his hand to pick up the sword stuck in the ground. A system window appears saying that the item's value has been reduced to 0% for belonging to someone else. The window turns red and indicates that the Master of Weapons skill has been activated, which consequently activated the passive weapon theft skill. In seconds, the protagonist removes the sword stuck from the ground and runs towards the bandits, beheading the first one. The young man asks who he is. While killing the bandit, Baphomet says he just wanted to know who the hell broke his toys. The young man is confused by the word toys. On top of a body thrown to the ground, the protagonist looks at the bandits who are terrified to see him. The protagonist asks the young man if they are dead. With a smile, the young man asks the protagonist what he is talking about. The protagonist, with a serious look, asks who they are. With an ironic expression, the young man asks how old he is to be crying over some toys. Taken by anger, the protagonist runs towards the bandits. The young man shouts to the bandits to wait because they don't know what the protagonist can do, while questioning if the protagonist is a hunter. But soon he changes his expression, saying he will see what the protagonist is capable of. Running towards the protagonist, the bandits say it's 2 against 1, so it should be enough. The protagonist faces the bandits and easily removes the weapons from their hands. Approaching, the protagonist stabs one of the bandits, and the other bandit tries to counterattack, calling him a bastard, but is held and then slashed. With an expression of rage, the protagonist faces the leader, who finds this quite interesting, and charges at the protagonist, who easily defends against his attack. The young man asks if he is angry and what his rank is. Baphomet ignores him, delivering a kick, and the guy asks if he is rank C. Smiling, he charges again and says he is much more than just a rank C. He launches an attack at the protagonist, who narrowly dodges, getting grazed on the face. The young man asks why a hunter like him is in that place pretending to be a tough guy, and if the protagonist came because he wanted to steal from the hunters too. He says he is sorry, but he got there first, thinking it would be interesting to work with the protagonist, but changes his mind and decides he will kill him, then runs again towards Baphomet, who prepares to defend. He strikes him in numerous parts of his body, thinking this is very good for him, because this idiot came without equipment, and says the protagonist thought he could defeat him just using strength. He is sure he has the advantage since the protagonist seemed inexperienced in fighting. While fighting, the young man says he can't hurt him too much because the protagonist is very valuable. An attack is about to hit Baphomet's face, but he blocks it. Even the enemy is impressed by that, and the system alerts him that his passive battle has been activated and his bleeding has stopped. His status progress increased by 15%. The leader is incredulous that Baphomet is blocking his attacks. At that moment, he lands a punch squarely on his face, throwing him against the wall. Before he could get out of the rubble, Baphomet was already attacking him again. He barely manages to block, disbelieving how strong the guy is, who attacks him again without rest. But the young man gains some distance. In seconds, the protagonist is at his side, ready to strike again. Smiling, he thinks it's ridiculous how that guy doesn't get tired. A clash of blades happens, and the leader thinks the more the protagonist attacks him, the more tired he will get. He is sure that Baphomet must be rank B2. But with a terrifying look, the protagonist faces the young man, making him wonder what he is fighting against. Baphomet lands a precise cut on his arm, and tells the young man that the severed arm is revenge for the man who always accompanied him. Remembering his friend, desperate, the young man screams, asking what he did. Then, cutting off another arm of the young man, the protagonist says that this is for the guy who always smiled, remembering the bald, smiling man, and the left leg is for the chubby guy, remembering the glutton. Screaming in pain and despair, the young man begs him to stop. But it was too late, and the protagonist had cut off his right leg, avenging the boy named Sha Mim Wu. The protagonist prepares to end the young man's life, and writhing on the ground, the leader calls him useless. With the blade about to pierce his chest, he says this is for irritating him. With a distorted expression, the leader says no, but that was his end. Enraged, the protagonist continues striking him multiple times, repeating for him to die. However, the system alerts him that with great power comes great responsibility. But that seems to go unnoticed by Baphomet. The system says that the battle passive has activated the Berserk skill due to an intense desire to kill, while he repeats to himself that he wants to be a human different from that guy who is now writhing behind him. He points the sword at her, and with a bloodthirsty look, he thinks he must kill her too. His mind gets lost in frenzy, and he thinks he has to kill all humans. With a dark face, he tells her to die, and approaches with the sword for the final blow, when suddenly he hears a man's voice and stops. The man was reporting through the walkie-talkie that he had found some survivors, but strangely, there was a survivor trying to kill another survivor. Baphomet looks at him confused. Thinking there are only two, he charges at them, who think they have seen him somewhere before. Both observe the protagonist's movements. He shouts, preparing for combat. When he was about to attack the two, the spirit of a hand appears and, pushing him, says it has just saved him, so he must not die yet. Touching his face, the hand tells him to sleep for a while. Then he loses consciousness in front of the men in suits, lying on the ground with foam in his mouth. The protagonist wonders what that was. In a dream, he is sitting on a throne, and someone calls him Lord Baphomet, repeating for him to get up. Baphomet raises his hand and says, "Die. All humans must die in the name of Baphomet." A voice calls him a frog in the well, meaning someone ignorant who doesn't know about the world beyond the fence where he lives. Raven kills him and says maybe he doesn't know, but he is no longer the king of the tower. He was always weak, and the only thing the weak deserve is death. Suddenly, he wakes up scared, confused about what happened. He looks around, wondering where he is since this is not the quarry. Someone asks if he can hear and says he finally regained consciousness. While the man smiles, Baphomet asks who he is. The man responds, questioning if he is the famous Mr. Swindler, and asks if he is not the same liar who tried to steal the credits of the hero of the Abyss Tower. But now he killed a hunter without breaking a single bone. Is he trying to steal someone's credits again? And questions if he really killed the hunter without any help. Baphomet seems confused with all these questions. The man says he tried to do several researches about the protagonist, but found no name in any document proving his existence, and says he doesn't know if the protagonist is a hunter or not, but has characteristics of a hunter. Finally, he asks who the boy really is. While saying that depending on the answer, he would let him do something, Baphomet tries to punch him, but cannot break the isolation glass. Angrily, he questions what all these questions are about, and says if he wants to know who he really is, he should be more polite and introduce himself first, instead of locking him in this room. He defends himself, saying he is not a swindler, and that he killed that hunter himself. What are they going to do with this information? It was unfair that the guy broke his toys, and if he had several lives, he would come back and kill him in all of them. He tore off one of the guy's limbs so he would never return, and he would do it again. The man asks if he wouldn't like to do the same to him. From inside the room, he laughs at the protagonist's speech, and asks if he wants to kill him too. Suddenly, he appears face to face with Baphomet and says he appeared as he wanted so much, so what will he do? The protagonist is scared for a second, and looking at the man, he remembers Raven. Instantly, he jumps towards the man in the suit, but after a flash of movement, the protagonist looks foolish. The man asks if he is an awakener, but doesn't fight cleanly. Immobilized, he can only think that the guy is very strong. The man with glasses introduces himself as a member of the government-affiliated guild that works capturing criminal hunters. He explains to the protagonist that they were after the young hunter, but when they found him, he had already been killed by him. The guy was a hunter who committed many crimes like killing innocents and infiltrating dungeons to kill and sell their organs. Many rich old people bought this kind of thing from him since the organs of awakened hunters bring good health. Thanks to the protagonist, they got rid of this problem, but he is still guilty of killing him along with 5 other people. The autopsy showed that all were professionals, so how is it possible that someone who just awakened could do that? But the only information is that the protagonist is a swindler, so he was trying to find out who he really was, grinding his teeth. Baphomet thinks that this is a pain. Remembering Raven, he thinks that if he were stronger, this guy would be under his feet. Approaching the protagonist, the man with glasses says he might have to kill him. And all Baphomet can do is think that he is screwed. Already in the Hunter's administrative center, the place is busy thanks to the profession's current success. A woman is thanking and says she hopes to become a hunter. Another attendant calls client number 122 and asks how she can help him. Expressionless and hesitant, Baphomet appears. In the conversation, the man with glasses laughing asked if the protagonist was scared and said they can't kill him no matter what he did, as much as he would like to, but confessed that a talented person like him could easily handle this situation. He says he wants the protagonist to become a registered hunter and says his natural assassin talents can help them in the future. Back at the headquarters, he tells the woman that he wants to register as a hunter. She responds, asking for his identification and name. The protagonist remembers that the man with glasses said he would help him and that his aptitude test would be in another location. The woman says she is confirmed and thanks him, telling him to choose his hunter name. The man with glasses told him that the hunter name system is to separate hunters from ordinary people. The woman says he can't use his real name and that if he doesn't have an idea for a hunter name, they can recommend one to him. The man warned him to choose a name that wouldn't attract too much attention. He thinks they will regret giving him this chance and declares he will become the strongest of all. Smiling, he tells the attendant that his hunter name will be Baphomet, and once again, this name will cause fear. In a dense forest, a wolf monster is about to bite someone, but is quickly surprised by the protagonist who knees it. But the wolf was not alone, and suddenly another wolf attacks Baphomet from behind. He turns, preparing to attack the animal, and easily slams it to the ground. The pack approaches the protagonist, but strangely, they turn their backs on him. Suddenly, a humanoid wolf appears from the bushes. It attacks Baphomet without hesitation, but the protagonist raises his hand, telling the werewolf to wait. The werewolf stops and stares at him with a foolish look. The protagonist raises his hand to the sky and says, "Leave." But nothing happened, and he stands there confused like an idiot with his hand up. The werewolf then attacks again, but is hit in the stomach by a punch and blood gushes from the monster. Sometime later, he exits the dungeon, pondering why his power hasn't fully returned. The system window appears, giving him a secret mission to take revenge on the human, promising to grant the power he so desires. Looking, he says maybe his power hasn't fully returned because that human was too weak. Angrily, he says that before it was in the tower, and now with him being human. Scratching his head, he says he hasn't found the answer to his question and needs to think about what to do. Clenching his fists, he thinks that since his power is returning, it's a good idea to train since he started from the beginning once. Suddenly, he feels a chill down his spine. He turns to see what it was, and the man with glasses asks what kind of name that was, showing a message from the boss that says he had warned him not to attract attention. Everyone thinks it's revenge for being called a swindler, not to mention the tower investigations are already over. And the person who finished the tower was a guy named Raven. The situation is terrible because the best hunter in all of Korea died killing Baphomet. The protagonist says he doesn't care and asks why those people cared so much about him without even knowing him. He is strong and won't let these people shake him. The man shows him the phone again and asks if he really doesn't care while Baphomet looks confused. Then the man says he will let him handle this alone and see what happens, but he better show up on Jeju Island. Walking with a guy in a cap beside him, the protagonist gets startled by seeing something. Looking at the sea, he remembers he saw something similar in one of the toy's items. The man tells the protagonist he will call a taxi and informs him they still have a few hours before they go there. The protagonist runs off, all excited and happy, shouting that it's the sea. The man remembers the guy with glasses, who said they couldn't trust the protagonist and asked why. The man with glasses responds that the protagonist is a type of talent he had never seen in all the time he worked at the guild. On the island, a blonde man talks to a friendly redhead. He seems confused when someone beside him comments about his blue eyes. It was Baphomet staring at them like a psychopath, saying that this is the rare race of humans the toy had mentioned. Taeyeon drags him by the shirt while he bids farewell to the confused couple. He is then informed about an orientation for new hunters. Confused, Baphomet asks if he really needs to participate, and Taeyong says yes, since hunters are government property. He says he will give him an ID and a phone, making Baphomet curious. And then the guy says that from now on, his name will be Cha Min-woo. The protagonist looks at his ID and recalls the words of the boy who accompanied him named Cha Min-woo. Taeyong then says it's almost time to go to the location. The protagonist asks if he is going along because he thought Taeyong would just watch. Baphomet's smile changes when he sees something, thinking he already knew. One of them says it's a pleasure to meet them, and today he is in charge of the orientation, and he tells them to call him Misty Demon. At the dining area, the protagonist asks the guy with the glasses if he doesn't work in a secret organization, and the guy tells him to speak quietly. Our protagonist says he's a swindler, it seems. Laughing, the guy agrees, saying he's a rare type. The protagonist doesn't seem to understand what he meant by that. He tells the protagonist to look at those people who are talking among themselves for a long time. They are angry because he chose the same name as the boss who killed the best hunter in Korea. People wonder among themselves if he is the imposter and how he has the courage to appear. The guy with glasses says he is crazy for naming himself Baphomet, and that he should pretend not to know him because he doesn't want to be spoken ill of either. A girl appears and calls him boss, saying it's good he came. He responds saying yes and that he is on his way. The protagonist says whatever, it's better to keep eating. At the table, the girl asks the man what he was talking about with the Nagas hunter. He says it's nothing, and that he just asked him about the orientation. Others also say he should have been stopped by the government, and that using the name Baphomet was too much. But the guy with glasses asks everyone if he broke any law by chance. They agree he did not break any law, while he looks at Baphomet, thinking he went too far with that fake name. But he is impressed that the boy seems to smile and not care about the current situation. Something then catches his attention. Seeing someone approaching, he wonders why those people are there. Everyone with a golden badge is a rank hunter. He asks the girl why, and she explains they came to train. She says it's great for novices to get advice, and sweating nervously, he says he understood. Baphomet was impressed with the feast in front of him. He wondered how the food tasted since he never needed to eat when he was a demon. When he was about to eat, someone pours a cup over his head. The atmosphere changes and people stop to observe the scene. The guy asks if he is the Baphomet they've been talking about, and says he wondered what kind of person he was but seems like a normal guy. His name is Leon, a rank hunter. A man arrives and says it's good to see Leon, and tells him to be more respectful since there are many people here, but Leon asks if he wants him to just respect that guy. The man apologizes to the protagonist and says they lost many friends and family because of Baphomet. It's normal for hunters to get nervous because he chose such a provocative name and suggests changing it. Baphomet retaliates without thinking, headbutting Leon. Everyone around is in disbelief. The guy with glasses bangs his head on the table, and the girl is startled. Leon calls him a bastard while grinding his teeth. Grabbing the protagonist by the shirt, he asks if he wants to die today. The protagonist says they are making a lot of noise over a name, and it's not like using the name Baphomet will resurrect him. Leon asks who he thinks he is. The protagonist asks if it wouldn't have been better to send their friend to kill Baphomet instead of losing so many people. A guy next to him tells Leon not to do it. Smiling, the protagonist taunts him, saying he understands that he is angry for being a weakling. With an expression of rage, Leon asks what he just said, and prepares to punch the protagonist, asking if he is finished talking. The guy with glasses is in disbelief that this is happening. Leon's pupils contract, and he tells the protagonist he is going to kill him. A young man with white hair says he's already tired, and asks if all rank hunters are like this. Approaching his fist to the protagonist's face, Leon says this is for Raven. As the punch comes towards the protagonist, he thinks about whether to dodge or block. No matter how much he thinks, he won't be able to escape this blow. The white-haired guy grabs Leon's arm and says it's against the rules to fight there. Leon and the protagonist stare at each other, and the protagonist wonders where he has seen that face. Two hunters at the next table observe and comment on something about the white-haired hunter. Baphomet is incredulous upon hearing that the white-haired guy is Raven's brother. Nearby, they discuss Raven having a younger brother who is quite famous, the rank hunter named Griffin. Leon is sulking, and the man comments that it has been a while since they last saw each other and that today is a training day. Not knowing that Griffin would be there, Leon, irritated, says it's ridiculous to talk about rules considering what Baphomet did to him before. Griffin says he's right and also wishes someone had killed Baphomet earlier and that if his brother had been stronger, he wouldn't have died. Leon tells him to shut up, and the man in the background tells him to calm down, saying he understands how they feel but they can't fight here, and it's best to let it go this time. Leon says he wonders how someone from the Hunters Association let him handle this event. The man puts his hand on his face, knowing that Leon is making a mistake. Smiling, the man with glasses says if he didn't like it, he could just file a complaint, and ask Baphomet to come with him for a moment. He was going to ask why, but the guy whispers in his ear to go quickly, and they then leave. From the corner of his eye, Griffin observes the protagonist with anger. In another part of the association, the girl welcomes the new hunters and says her name is Han Yu-jung and she will explain the system. She asks if they have noticed a blue screen when they wake up and says that for inexperienced hunters, it will be easier to use the system with the program provided by the association. With his hand on his face, Baphomet remembers something. The man with glasses telling him to hit him while the protagonist asks if he has gone mad. He says that if he hadn't asked Baphomet to register as a hunter, none of this would have happened and it's all his fault. Then smiling, he asks again for Baphomet to hit him for being so foolish. The protagonist asks if he's serious and says he won't hold back, and the guy replies that he also wanted to hit him but still has the conference. Baphomet says he doesn't understand why he needs to do this if they will want to humiliate him again. The man responds that he needs to get stronger and have patience. In the end, it's like he said, but arrogance won't get him anywhere, and currently, he's weaker than a rank A, so he has to be patient. A guy fiddling with his phone asks if it's that guy they talk about so much, and why that bastard is there, and another responds that because of him, even those who have nothing to do with it are being mocked. Someone nearby punches a vending machine. The guy's eyes widen in surprise at who it was. The protagonist says he killed a fly and asks if he should crush all of them until their guts spill out. They are completely scared, and awkwardly leave, talking about random topics out of fear of Baphomet. The protagonist thinks they are two idiots, and that this should be enough to not bother him. Seeing that a drink came out without putting money in, he thinks he's getting lucky. He thinks about the conversation those two had, stating the rank of hunters would train there. Night then falls, and the protagonist watches two people observing a duel. A guy is thrown to the ground. With a blue ribbon in hand, Leon is announced as the winner. The guy says he is not as good as him, but has learned a lot, and Leon asks if he thinks he has improved. The man says Hunter Leon is on his 8th victory, and asks if anyone else wants to face him. The crowd says nothing, and Leon then calls Griffin, and says to fight, and asks if he knows the rules. The man explains that whoever grabs the blue ribbon from the other's arm wins, but can't use any passive or active abilities, and since it's a friendly fight, if anyone gets hurt, they should stop. The guy with glasses arrives and asks what they are watching. The girl says that many new hunters came to see the training, and he says that's good for them. It is announced that the duel will begin. The girl asks if they don't think Hunter Griffin is a guy with the potential to make them single mothers, and the other responds that he is definitely handsome and that she will ask for his number later. They are infatuated, crying without shedding tears. The girl says he is very popular and asks how old he is, and the guy with glasses says he is in his 2nd year, which leaves them incredulous. While dueling, Leon asks Griffin if they should see how their skills have evolved. Griffin prepares and kicks at Leon, but he easily dodges. He tries a punch, but Griffin manages to duck. Griffin concentrates and tries to grab him, but Leon dodges again. He advances again, but Leon dodges once more. Finally, Griffin grabs Leon's arm, but Leon easily breaks free. Leon thinks Griffin's reflexes are good, but what if he does this? He moves in to grab the ribbon, saying there's an opening, but Griffin escapes, and Leon realizes he made a mistake. With that, Griffin grabs the ribbon. Everyone is impressed, while Baphomet watches calmly. Griffin is announced the winner and everyone praises him for being a prodigy. They say he will probably become an S-rank hunter very quickly. Leon extends his hand, saying Griffin is really strong and that he worked hard to get there. Griffin ignores him and asks Agent Jimin if he can spar again. He replies that he can and asks who he wants to spar with. He says Baphomet. Baphomet himself has a dumbfounded look and is startled when he finally understands. Even Leon is confused. Jimin hesitantly says Griffin is an A rank and chose a novice, while above, the guy with glasses says this will be interesting. But with this, everyone will see the difference between a veteran and a novice, and that it will be a good example for other hunters. Baphomet and Griffin prepare for the duel. Baphomet, looking at the guy with glasses, thinks he doesn't know what he is imagining but thought he had said to stay quiet. He attentively watches Griffin, remembering that he is Raven's younger brother. He believes it is impossible to win in his current state. While Griffin watches him, Baphomet thinks he will wait for him to get tired. Suddenly, Griffin charges at the protagonist, who defends against the attack. Griffin grabs his arm and Baphomet thinks he thought they weren't supposed to hurt each other. Thrown to the ground, Baphomet thinks Griffin wants to kill him. A punch is about to hit Baphomet's face. He dodges and the punch destroys the ground. He thinks he didn't expect Griffin to attack so quickly. Griffin thinks he won't let him get away unscathed. Watching the duel, some people say it must be hard for Griffin to fight a stranger who uses the name of the monster that killed his brother. As Griffin beats Baphomet, the crowd thinks it's like he's hitting a punching bag. Baphomet thinks it hurts and prepares to kick, but Griffin is already behind him, grabbing him and throwing him to the ground again. Baphomet tries to use his legs and manages to break free, retreating. He realizes Griffin is just toying with him. Looking at Griffin, he knows this has happened before and wonders why he feels guilty. Griffin comes in to punch and Baphomet says no. He doesn't regret anything and dodges. He will keep fighting. Taking an elbow to the face, he says Griffin is very strong. But smiling, he realizes this is what he missed. Suddenly, Griffin stops and says that's enough of this. Baphomet wonders why he is stopping. Griffin tells Jimin there is no reason to continue this game, and Jimin asks if he is serious, and then asks if any other hunter wants to participate. Looking at Griffin, Baphomet thinks he wants to continue and can't leave. But he remembers the guy with the glasses telling him that even if he has talent, he is nowhere near the current A rank, and to surpass them, he must be patient. He wonders why the gap between them is so big. His consciousness detaches while he tells himself he will become stronger. Someone asks for permission and asks if he is listening. Smiling, he says he doesn't care. And the shadow of Baphomet's real body appears behind him with a distorted smile. Griffin feels a frightening danger behind him, and Baphomet's hand suddenly appears. In reflex, he turns and gives the protagonist a mighty kick, sending him flying. Everyone is shocked, and the guy with glasses is incredulous. Griffin realizes he overdid it. The protagonist flew so far with that kick that he broke through the wall and fell into a pool where several wonders of this world were. They wonder what fell from the sky. A blonde girl notices someone fell into the pool. Drowning, Baphomet says he didn't expect the guy to kick so hard, and now he's screwed because he can't swim. He couldn't breathe. As he loses consciousness, the figure of a girl approaches. Seeing her up close, he can only think of the color of her hair and her blue eyes. She extends her hands to save him. Underwater, they observe each other, when he says he can't take it anymore and grabs her head, screaming that he can't breathe and asking for help. Outside, the redhead asks if it hasn't been a few minutes since she jumped in to save him, and the girl replies yes. Some strands of hair appear on the surface of the water. The girls are frightened, wondering if it was hair. They scream that something has happened and tell someone to call an ambulance. The voice says number 8 while a monster holds a spear. The voice tells him not to stand still and go to work. He asks Squirk, and the other goat says yes. He asks if he didn't sleep at night. Baphomet sees himself being executed by a hero, and suddenly he opens his eyes. With his hand on his head, he thinks that since he became human, he started having dreams, and this is just another one. However, there is a very plump mouth next to him. The girl with golden hair lying unconscious beside him carried enormous potential in various areas of life. He questions about the woman and remembers when he fell into the water. Suddenly, the redhead appears and asks if he won't thank her. Scared, he backs away but ends up bumping into another person's leg. He looks to the side hesitantly and sees 2 monumental sculptures of flesh standing, observing him with a gaze that would end anyone in 3 seconds watching this video. The guy with glasses and Hanjung arrive, apologizing, saying there were some problems. They recognize the plump redhead as Echidna from the Art Guild. He says he didn't know she would be there and hopes no one got hurt. Echidna shouts, calling for someone. The girl hands over strands of hair, saying she collected all of them. Echidna says very well and strokes the girl's chin while they stare at each other. The guy with glasses asks what happened. Echidna says she was in a meeting with the guild and had been staying there since yesterday and decided to have a pool party, until the protagonist suddenly fell and turned her pool into a horror show. The guy with glasses apologizes for the confusion, but she, holding the strands of hair, asks if he knows what that is. He says it's a strand of hair, and she responds that it's not just any strand. They had to wake up early to go to an expensive hair salon in Gangnam. Every day they receive expensive organic products to keep their hair beautiful and shiny. And he doesn't know how many hours she spent on the phone with that hairstylist, to the point of even getting dark circles under her eyes. And she screams, saying that this is part of the hair of one of her prestigious hunters, and that at this moment she is lying there on the ground. He calms her down, saying he already apologized and asks her not to be angry. She says they must take responsibility. Looking at Baphomet, she says it will be 1 million won per strand, and they owe her 116 million won. The guy with glasses thinks it was already bad with the rank of hunters, but now it's even worse involving Echidna. Baphomet says it doesn't make sense, 1 million won for a single strand of hair. That was ridiculous, and not even dead would he pay that for a strand of hair. The girl says he is very dumb, and the brunette asks if he doesn't know the blonde. She's known as Valkyrie, an S-rank hunter and number 1 in popularity rank. Besides being very skilled, she is the most beautiful hunter in the world. The plump redhead shouts that besides being beautiful, she is a celebrity in everything she wears sells out in seconds in stores. Echidna tells them to stop and says trying to explain this to a novice would be a waste of voice. She says it seems the protagonist doesn't know much about this industry and then decides to give a tip, saying that in this life, you have to do what others tell you and be grateful. And if he doesn't have all the money now, she can divide it into installments, or she can introduce him to a job that pays easy money. He remembers the doctor who tortured him in ways that would make him turn into a country singer, saying, "God forbid, but I wish." He calls her a very polite adjective and says he won't fall for that again, and says she should ask what happened first before blaming him, and that if she wants to resolve something, she should talk to the guy with glasses. He says the kid kicked him so hard he ended up. Suddenly, Griffin arrives face to face with Echidna. The girls recognize him and ask if she got into trouble with him, who is from the Misty Guild. Slightly oily, Echidna glares at him. She steps closer and asks if it's true that he kicked the guy so hard he flew over there, and Griffin confirms. The assistant says they were in a friendly A-rank fight, and Echidna says it apparently wasn't intentional then. Looking at Baphomet, she asks if he thinks that because of that, she will make things easier for him, and says he still has to compensate her. Smiling, the guy with glasses interrupts, saying they will take care of it and asks her not to worry. She asks if the administration can handle something like this, and he says yes. But you must know that monetary compensation is prohibited by law in these cases, and asks how about they discuss exclusive tower rights. An exclusive right grants a guild the monopoly of towers with infinite monster farming. He explains that they have a tower that has not been completed and has been around for a year and a half, offering 1 year of exclusivity. She becomes thoughtful, saying she will talk to the members of her guild. Han Yujung asks if they can give tower possession so easily, and he responds that if it's the art guild, it's a good deal. Echidna thinks, and says she agrees with the offer. The guy with glasses smiles, giving a thumbs up, saying it was an excellent decision. The blonde girl opens her eyes and someone asks if she is awake. The girl asks if everything is okay, and the blonde responds that she is fine. The blonde asks if those people are from the Hunter's administration, but Echidna interrupts, saying she will explain later. The guild I most wanted to join on this planet walks away. While Baphomet watches the blonde, she notices his gaze and also stares back. It catches him off guard, and she gives a cheeky wink and smile. He wonders what that was about. The guy with glasses apologizes again for the trouble and says they should have prevented situations like this, and that was a lack of care on his part. Baphomet and Griffin look a bit embarrassed, feeling foolish. Walking down the corridor, Baphomet thought it was obvious he would encounter people obsessed with money. He wonders why that woman winked at him and if she wanted to fight, while some hands approach the ribbon. Griffin suddenly grabs the ribbon. Baphomet is a bit surprised, and Griffin says he didn't even notice he was coming. Staring at Baphomet, he asks when he took his ribbon without him noticing. He remembers when he kicked the protagonist away, and looked at his arm and didn't see the ribbon, which at that moment was floating in the pool. Baphomet says he just took advantage of Griffin being too offensive, and Griffin asks if he really is a novice. After all, a novice wouldn't analyze a fight so simply. Staring at Baphomet, he asks who he really is. Baphomet doesn't respond, and then asks if he is nagging so much just because of the name, but Griffin ignores and tells him to answer the first question. Making Griffin irritated, the protagonist says he wouldn't answer. He would only answer if he were being rational, but he is acting purely out of sentimentality. Griffin yells, asking if the protagonist really thinks he wants to avenge that trash. The only thing he thinks about is himself. He has no resentment, and asks if Baphomet will answer. The protagonist comes to a conclusion, and asks if he is upset because his brother killed Baphomet before him. Griffin seems confused, and the protagonist says that's it, apparently, and says he could sense a kind of anger and not hatred in the fight, so he knows Griffin is angry at his brother for stealing Baphomet from him, and asks if it's not revenge for his brother, but for him stealing his goal. Griffin asks if that isn't being a hunter, and if it's not normal for him and his brother to want to kill the same monster. Baphomet says he can do whatever he wants and kill whoever he wants, but he doesn't need to become the best in the world. Griffin is speechless for a few seconds, and then says he will change the question, explaining that before Baphomet attacked, he felt a threatening presence. A presence he only feels in towers, and his, by the way, carried strong magical power. He wanted to know how Baphomet exudes the presence of a demon. The only conclusion is he is a demon in human skin. Baphomet starts laughing like a psychopath. Baphomet asks if he is a funny type of toy while thinking that Griffin is as good as Raven, and says that yes, he is a demon with incredible magic, but now he wants to know what Griffin will do with that information. Griffin says he will die if the association finds out, and Baphomet says then they would fight again, but this time to the death. They are in the same boat, and when his identity is revealed, he will be waiting for Griffin. He tells him to keep getting stronger or he will die at his hands. In a neighborhood, Baphomet asks where they are going. The guy with glasses says he can't just stay at the internet cafe and sauna, so he found a place for the kid to stay. In front of a gate, he says they have arrived. There is even a large sustainable ecological garden, and a traditional style house that you only find in Korea. The two stay silent for a few seconds. Baphomet gets angry, but the guy with glasses thinks he was prepared for this. He starts trying to make excuses about the problems Baphomet caused, but Baphomet just says the place is very nice. If he removes the weeds, he will have a large space. The guy is incredulous, trembling, and asks why he isn't complaining. Maybe he had head problems after falling in the pool that time. Baphomet says he is fine, and the guy says if that's the case, then everything is alright, and then asks if nothing happened after the first day. Baphomet remembers that wherever he went, Griffin was watching him, even when he was desperate to go to the bathroom. Someone watches the two from a distance, saying it's good that the young man appeared and that he will be very useful. The protagonist feels like someone is watching him, but at the gate, there is no one. The guy sits down and says it's time to start the meeting about the group he will be joining, which even has a mentor. From a distance, two hunters talk, and one of them points, saying the guy has arrived. A bit awkward. Baphomet approaches. While he stares, the guy says he will be mentoring someone famous. He says it will be an honor to help him. A bit earlier, Baphomet questioned the guy with glasses about the monitoring. He explained about attracting the bait, a hunting method where you lead the prey to another area. Baphomet understood that he had to gather information about the mentor and capture him. But the guy told him to get real because if the mentor is rank B, those who work with him must be as well. The mentor then introduces himself as Quartz and says he was a freelancer but became a government dog at his wife's request. Quartz asks if he offended Baphomet, who, with an angry face, disagrees, and Quartz says he will give them the precautions. Baphomet remembers that the guy with glasses told him to just get close to this guy so they could capture him alive. He knew that capturing him without losing some limbs was easy. The problem was how to get close to that guy. Quartz looked back and said they could start. It was a portal with D-rank monsters, and the 4 novice hunters there would clear it following his instructions. The hunters seemed insecure since they were F-rank on paper. Quartz explained that normally F-rank hunters start in D-rank portals. The boy in the white shirt noticed his friend signal a no with her head. In the background, Baphomet says that military weapons can handle E and F monsters, so hunters only deal with portals above D. Obviously, he memorized this because of the Dan manager. Quartz said their work starts in places where military weapons no longer have an effect, and went to the portal, telling everyone to follow him with their weapons. But Baphomet only pointed to his fists. Suddenly, one of the hunters bumped into his shoulder, telling him to move. Baphomet obviously didn't like that, and the hunter looks back saying he thinks too highly of himself. At that moment, Baphomet remembers this was the same trio who were badmouthing him at the event. Already inside the dungeon, one of them shouts and delivers a precise blow to a lizard man. He smiles without realizing he's about to be attacked. He barely manages to defend himself. While Quartz analyzes that he has good strength but makes unnecessary movements and has little agility, the girl strikes but nothing happens, and the analyst notices she is not strong enough to handle it. The mage casts a spell but completely misses the target. Those 3 are far from competent, and comparing them to that other guy makes no sense. A blow almost hits Baphomet, but he is calm. Amid the various monsters attacking him, he practically dances. The creatures, irritated, go mad and charge at him, but he moves so skillfully that they end up attacking each other. Baphomet senses a threat approaching, but easily steps on the head of a goblin and finishes it off while advancing towards 2 others. He grabs the skull of one, then the other, easily crushing both with his bare hands, while Quartz watches everything attentively. Baphomet is disgusted by being all messy, while Quartz realizes the boy is a complete hunter. Among the awakened, geniuses like him are known as irregulars. But even for a genius, it is strange for someone to be so skilled in battles right after awakening. He tries to smile to make a good impression, as the instructor told him. The 3 other hunters are exhausted, but Quartz says at least no one suffered any serious injuries. Baphomet hears that the guy is about to give feedback on the fights, but he is frustrated because hunting weak creatures is no fun at all. He wanted to fight someone who could at least keep up with him, like that rank B mentor, for example. He just needs something that can leave a strong impression on the mentor. At that moment, he has an idea about what to do. The girl says they just need to kill the boss, and the guy next to her says it's strange that he hasn't appeared since they cleared the area. At Quartz's request, they take all the monster corpses there. They ask if it's enough, and he says yes. He then explains that the condition for the boss to appear is to kill everything or for it to sense a strong smell of blood. At that moment, they feel an earthquake, and Quartz warns that in the second case, the boss appears in a frenzy. The novice hunters recognize it as the death worm, a monster attracted by the smell of blood. The gigantic creature appears in front of them, and Quartz warns them to be careful. The amateurs start questioning if they can really beat something so big and freeze. Suddenly, a kick hits the guy's head, telling him to move. It was Baphomet being crazy as usual. He also took the guy's weapon, leaving the other 2 in the group in disbelief. As he advanced, everyone said he was stupid for not knowing that stealing a weapon leaves you with 1% of its attack power. Quartz was about to say the boy seemed excited, but he had already passed by in a blur. He jumped without hesitation towards the boss. Just the height of the jump was enough to leave them in disbelief. At that moment, Quartz could only think that it was going to end. Baphomet was face to face with the bloodworm. He felt something coming towards him, and the worm attacked him with its cultural anim tongue. But a beam of light cut through the darkness, and in the next moment, the protagonist was on the ground. The monster had been sliced in half. Neither the hunters nor Quartz could believe it, while Baphomet looked back to see their reactions. People follow those who are more powerful than they are. That was a hard lesson he learned recently. One of them says aloud that he killed the giant beast in 1 hit, while thinking the boy is too good. The other huntress at that moment thought it would be better to quit the profession and become a housewife for Baphomet. In disbelief, Quartz clapped, saying it was incredible. And with that, Baphomet's hunter results had already been decided. Baphomet felt confident, thinking that now he was sure Quartz would want to get close to him. Smiling, Quartz said that it seems he doesn't need his guidance anymore. Baphomet's unshakable confidence was completely shattered. While he trembled, Quartz explained that now he could work as an independent hunter. He was sweating cold and was congratulated for graduating on the first day. Outside, Quartz said they should just go to the office, but Baphomet shouted for him to wait, and said that actually he's not that strong and everyone there could have done the same. But the faces of the guys clearly denied that. Walking away, Quartz says it was for a short time, but it was good to work with him. And with that, the boy was abandoned alone, and I wonder where is that housewife to make instant noodles for him. Baphomet is startled when someone calls him. He looks embarrassed because he had never gone through that before. It was the most poorly drawn girl in the work to make sure we don't get the wrong idea, but the protagonist is a monster, so he should finish her off. In the car, the agent says he knew something like this could happen. A guy seems to be in combat, and Baphomet draws a blade from his back. He received a simple mission from the agent. There was a rank C criminal hunter who needed to be eliminated. And as for the method of execution, it could be any way you wanted. Baphomet used a method where you drive the body into a dungeon and then kill the boss, making both disappear forever. Excited, he says he also earned magic stones and now he will buy something good to eat. But he stops for a second and frowns. The agent asks if he didn't get angry in the end. The protagonist punches the wall. That bastard Quartz escaped without him doing anything. The next day, Quartz was briefing the group about the next D-rank dungeon. From afar, someone was watching, saying he couldn't get too close. It was Baphomet playing the spy. He had searched everywhere, but found nothing wrong about that guy. There was no connection between Quartz and the crimes. His hand trembled as he thought it had been a while since he saw blood. If only this were a lawless district, he could first cut off an arm, right after incapacitate him from fighting, and then torture him enough to find out who his accomplice is. Quartz suddenly feels something, but when he looks back, Baphomet has already hidden. Now in the human world, he would have to resolve things as a human. Suddenly, Quartz started running. He wondered why that was. After a while, he stopped in a random place. Sweating with chills, he wondered where he was. A girl appears, calling him dear. She says his face is pale, but he yells, asking why she isn't answering his calls. With a frightened expression, she says she was distracted while he hugs her, but she notices he is trembling, and Baphomet watches them hugging, telling each other they are okay. She says they should go home and she will make something delicious for him. But Baphomet smiles, saying he found a clue. A head hits the ground, and the other hunter who helped Baphomet in the beginning receives a message from him asking how to fake a good accident. The guy is confused by that. Suddenly, Quartz enters his house running, calling for his wife's name, but he sees her treating some wounds on Baphomet. Baphomet pretends to be surprised. What he did was pretend he saved her from a car accident, but standing in the middle of Quartz's house, he knows he must be suspicious now. He sees a picture on a shelf and approaches. When he is about to touch it, someone calls his name. Quartz held his hand and smiled at her. Thanking him for saving his wife, he explains that he wanted to know the car's license plate number. Somehow, he wants to get Baphomet out of the house, so he says they should talk outside, but the wife insists they should have dinner. Since he is a colleague, she at least wants to thank him. Obviously, the glutton did not refuse free food. The wife was impressed with his appetite and even asked if he wanted more. She approached delicately to collect his plate, and Baphomet looked into her eyes. She stopped for a second and asked if he wanted anything else. And with that, she withdrew, saying she would bring more side dishes, while Baphomet said that as expected, he was not wrong about this woman. Smiling, Quartz asks if he is doing well in the hunter job. Baphomet responds not much since he graduated too quickly. While a plate was about to touch the floor, Quartz said he was no longer his mentor but could give advice. The plate broke and Baphomet stood up, asking if she was okay, who replied not to worry. Looking at Quartz, the protagonist said he was a very dedicated husband to the woman he had already lost once. Quartz asked what he was talking about, but Baphomet smiled, saying he would note the license plate number. He already knew very well that that woman had died a long time ago, from primary school, even during middle school, and even after entering high school. They believed that the marriage they dreamed of would keep them together forever. Quartz gave her the news that he was one of the irregulars. But that made his wife more insecure because a hunter's job was riskier, especially when one was an irregular. He talked about how they could get rich, but she only asked if he really needed all that. With that, Quartz decided to be a mentor and settled down next to his wife. One day, he received a teleportation device and gave it to her to use in case she encountered any danger. The days of peace they wanted to last forever were soon interrupted by the portal ruptures. Behind one of the pillars, his wife was hiding, asking for help. At that moment, she remembered the device. But she heard the screams of a girl surrounded by orcs next to her. She threw a bucket of paint on its head. She grabbed the girl and told her to take the chance to run. But she tripped on a small stone on the ground and fell face first as she lost her balance. The girl asked if she was okay and she replied yes. But at that moment, she saw the teleportation button on the ground. Instantly, she knew what it was. Without hesitation, she stole it, saying she knew what it was. As she prepared to press it, she apologized, and saying she wanted to live, she teleported away. The wife tried to say something, but it was too late, and the girl vanished. She heard something behind her, and calling for her husband, she died to one of the monsters. Her consciousness knew she had died, so what had her husband done to keep her alive? A few days later, walking down a corridor, Quartz remembered a call where he got the address of the hit-and-run driver. Opening the door, he knew the person behind it would be there, but he was shocked. What he found was his wife standing in front of a window. She looked lifeless and expressionless, and Quartz asked why she was there. Suddenly, the door behind him closed and someone said they expected him to follow the driver's address. It was Baphomet who had set a trap for him. He calmly walked past him, saying he didn't know how he got involved in the crime, but he knew very well what he received in return: the incredible dead wife. Angry, Quartz told him not to touch her, Baphomet poked her cheek, saying she became like a Manhwa after realizing she was already dead. Quartz kept losing his mind, telling him to stop. But the protagonist grabbed her face, asking how they resurrected her to be like that. Quartz then reached his limit, but Baphomet just threw her out the window, saying it wasn't his business. The husband couldn't do anything, and just fell to his knees in front of the window. Baphomet told him not to worry, since she was dead, he could just resurrect her again, and that he should stop pretending to be sad. Suddenly, Quartz's expression changed, and he drew his weapon from the system, saying Baphomet's mother was a very polite lady. Baphomet also drew his blade, saying unfortunately, he had to take him alive. But as a bonus, he would take his hands. And with that, one of the building's walls exploded. Amid the smoke, two suddenly emerged. Baphomet easily defended himself from the blows, while Quartz seemed not to know what to do. He swung his axe and struck at Baphomet's neck, who barely defended himself. He made the axe recoil but was forced to defend again. Quartz slowly approached, raised his axe over his back, and then threw it at Baphomet. But calmly, he defended against the attack, and in a flash of movement, he jumped off the walls, approaching, seeing an opening on Quartz's back. But as soon as he got close, Quartz raised a finger, and something hit Baphomet squarely, or not, because he actually summoned a weapon from his inventory and barely protected himself. Once again, he advanced towards Quartz, who defended, and began talking about his childhood. But Baphomet was not in the mood for stories and went on the offensive. As he struck, Quartz talked about middle school days, and even about high school moments. He swung at the air, saying they were always together. At the moment he arrived at the scene, he was in disbelief. How was it possible that her body was there? He was sure he had given her the teleportation device. That's when he concluded that if she didn't use it, someone had stolen it. He walked through the ruined city thinking no one would know if he did something at the teleportation facilities. But he saw something that changed his perception of it. The facilities were also completely destroyed. Even if she had used the device, she would have died. It was as if she were destined to die. And that's when he told himself that even in death, they would be together. He warns Baphomet that now he knows something he shouldn't and activates the skill windows of heaven, screaming that if Baphomet dies, everything will return to normal between them. But Baphomet says he doesn't care about any of that, and in one move cuts off the arm with the finger, perfect for liking this video. With that, we end part 1 of The Devil Who Kills Without Mercy. If you want to see that sweet continuation, activate the naughty bell, and I'm out of here.